Hello and welcome back to The Rundown. My name is Carl de La Paz.
And my name's Henry Kateska, and coming up in this week's episode, we head out and talk to the students of Latrobe about the new Apple launch. Caelum's back for another movie review and joins us in studio to talk about it.
And Mitch and Caelum will join us for sport to talk the AFL Grand Final and the AFL trade period.
But before we head into those stories, let's have a look at the latest news headlines. The Nobel Prize in Medicine has been awarded to two professors, James Allison from the US and Tasuku Honjo from Japan, for a breakthrough in cancer prevention. The two researchers learned how cancer can put a halt on the immune system and how to release it. Their work, conducted separately during the 1990s, led to the drug known as checkpoint inhibitors to be made. It was first used to treat the deadly skin cancer melanoma, and now it's being used for advanced stage tumours, including those of the lungs, head, neck, bladder, kidney, colon and liver. The drug marked an entirely new way to treat tumours. The Nobel Assembly of Sweden's Karolinska Institute said the research was a landmark in our fight against cancer. When they announced the award, the two scientists will share a $1.39 million prize.
University hazing has been described as appalling and a criminal act by the Q&A panel on Monday night's episode. A story told by a young woman of university hazing has shocked the show's panel and again called into question the culture of Australia's tertiary education institutions. Malice Laik, a former Monash University student, shared her own experience after asking the panel a question about how universities have handled rape and sexual assault accusations in the past. University hazing was raised as an issue earlier this year after a report revealed the true extent of hazing rituals in some universities, including La Trobe University. In 2017, The Age reported that nearly 1 in 3 students at La Trobe University have been sexually harassed on campus during their commute to and from university. A survey conducted that of 947 students at La Trobe University, 30% were sexually harassed at university and 24% were harassed on campus grounds in 2016. The figures reported are higher than any other Victorian university involved in the Australian Human Rights Commission National Survey on Campus Abuse.
Now for an interesting story coming out of England, where the University of Manchester has banned clapping and has opted for jazz hands instead in an attempt to help prevent people who suffer from anxiety and sensory issues. The student union of the university passed the intention of banning the practice at their first meeting of the year. According to the university student newspaper, they will use the British Sign Language alternative of jazz hands to make it more inclusive. However, a student representative appeared on Good Morning Britain denying the ban, saying instead the students were encouraged to use jazz hands and not clap, to be considerate to few students who had sensory issues. The newspaper noted that jazz hands had been widely used by the National Union of Students since 2015.
The new Apple smartphone was released last week in Australia, and it has already fallen under scrutiny. However, Apple has remained silent amongst complaints that its new iPhone XS and XS Max smartphones fail to charge consistently when plugged in. Users have reported that their devices refuse to charge. Reports have been told that some charge only if the display is woken up. A YouTube vlogger released a video demonstrating the problem. In a video published on Saturday, he tested 9 iPhones by plugging them into an official Apple power supply. The 2017 iPhone X charged without a problem, while the new XS and XS Max phones don't charge at all when plugged in. Complaints about the XS and XS Max have also been posted on Apple's discussion forum on its websites, as well as their social media pages. Some users have speculated that the problem is related to a recent change in Apple's security settings.
Apple is a big brand. It just launched last week, the new iPhone. So that's a big problem for them.
It sure did, and it's a really, really big brand. And mind you, I'm not a huge Apple person, but that's by choice. I think my biggest issue with Apple is that I don't like having to go through the Apple store when I want to download an application. Yep. I find that it's really intrusive. Like, I'm a Samsung person, I'm an Android. Sammy all the way. And I just prefer...
I'm an Apple person all the way. And
really?
Yes. Phone, laptop, everything. But the problem is, if it's battery, with any product, I feel like I'd opt out for something else that would last me longer. Yeah. I think battery life is the one issue people can't look past.
Yeah. And have you had any issues with your phone in the past this is obviously a charging issue. Have you got any problems with your phone at the moment that you could say, this is kind of typical?
Not battery life. I think as the phone gets older, battery life sort of declines, as any phone does, but first the buyers reported poor cellular reception and then this. But Apple has come out and said today, actually Forbes reported that the new iOS update that came out today should fix everything. So
let's hope it should. But I don't have this problem because I'm a Samsung girl and I can change my battery whenever I want.
I mean, sites such as iFan and iMore immediately came out and said that it works with the new iOS update, but we'll see how they go.
We shall see.
It's a really big problem for them to resolve such a problem
issue.
Before, just after a few days just after its release.
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely.
I don't think Apple was expecting it, and they had to work really fast for the iOS update.
Definitely.
But with the release of the new iPhone, Apple is set to make incredible profit and so much more. But this week you went out.
I did.
And got people's thoughts on it.
I did.
Let's see how it went.
Let's see how it went.
For all the fanboys and fangirls that get a little bit hot under the collar when thinking about Apple products, well, it's your lucky year because the new iPhone XS and XS Max are finally available here in Australia. Coming at a whopping 2,300 and somethings, it's pretty safe to say that not everybody can outright afford this extremely expensive phone. I went out of my way this week to investigate how La Trobe University students are feeling about the new iPhone news. Do they want the phone? Do they not want it? Are they in it just for the selfie game? Well, in order to find out, let's see what they have to say.
Take me through the process of why people would love to spend a couple $1,000s on a phone that if you drop it, it could shatter in front of you and your dreams are lost.
Well, it's because I'm going to drop some truth bombs on ya. That when the new iPhone comes out, the old iPhones start mysteriously glitching and stop working.
It's a conspiracy, I've heard about it.
And on the topic of malfunctions, and after some thorough investigation, I discovered that the new iPhone XS has actually had a number of issues, including owners having trouble charging their devices.
The new iPhone has had a lot of issues with charging. A lot of people have been complaining, saying that it doesn't charge. As an iPhone user, have you had any experience with your current phone? Or, just around in the wind, have you heard of Apple being really bad in terms of their products malfunctioning?
Not with myself, but I know my brother had a problem where no matter how many times he charged it, he felt like it was losing battery almost immediately back down to 20%.
Yeah. Well, isn't the whole thing with Apple that as soon as a new phone comes out, the old phones start to break so that you have to buy the new one?
Actually, yeah, it's taking the charges, it loses battery a bit more quicker than when I first got it. But other than that, I haven't noticed anything too bad.
So if the new iPhone is out and about, are La Trobe University students willing out to spit out a couple of grand for better specs and features?
I do not, but I want it.
Yeah, I'm happy with the 6S for now.
I am, but have to save a little bit first for it, I guess. Yeah. I usually buy them outright, so I buy them outright and then just get on a plan outside it because they're a lot per month.
It seems that the majority of La Trobe students want the new iPhone, but are also facing the lifelong struggle of poverty. For myself, at least, I'm quite content with my plastic Samsung phone. This is Carla De La Paz for The Rundown.
So, Carla, how did you find everyone's thoughts on the new iPhone release?
So I was really surprised to hear that a lot of students were prepared to spend 2,000 and something, as I mentioned on the new iPhone. Personally, I would never dream of spending that much money on a phone. I would go on a holiday. I would take a trip.
Yes. I think you're better off taking a holiday. You can get another different phone for cheaper.
Yeah, and as I said to you before, before we saw the package, that I've got my trusty Samsung that can withstand every knock and bump. I can drop it and it won't break. The new iPhone is made out of, it's got a glass screen and a glass backing, so that's why I mentioned.
Fancy.
So that's
turning
why,
into a luxury item.
Yeah, and that's why when I was in there, I said, what happens if you drop the phone? You've just dropped 2,000 and something dollars on the floor. What are you going to do with all that? iPhones aren't very sturdy when it comes to dropping them. But as you said, it's a really fancy model.
It is a fancy model.
I mean, you said that you're a big Apple fan. Would you consider possibly getting the new model?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe when the price goes down?
I don't know. With the glass backing, maybe not.
I've got an older model because they release one every year, so you sort of can't keep up. But people go out every year and buy the new model.
They do.
And pay hundreds of dollars a month just on their plan, and I don't know where people find the money.
I think it's insane. If I go past the Apple store, if I'm in Doncaster,
or if I'm in the city, I just see people lining up and I'm like, what is going on for a phone? Like, I can't believe that.
It's insane. There's like YouTube videos where people are unboxing iPhones
Yeah.
and people are obsessed. They're
Yeah.
obsessed with the thing, and of course they're going to go buy a new version.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always been a bit iffy with Apple. It kind of feels like a bit of a cult to me. And maybe that's just me. But I don't know.
I know, but you were interviewing uni students and we're not made out of money.
No, we're not. That's
have a
why I was like,
degree to pay for.
$2,000 could get me a hell of a lot more.
You could take a
than
trip to
phone.
Europe
I could. I really could.
twice.
Twice as well. But speaking of spending your money, you might want to keep it in your pocket for this next movie review. That's if it's your cup
If
of
it's your
tea.
thing.
If you're a movie fanatic, Caelum's back with another review. If you love psychological crime thrillers, this movie might just be for you. Caelum reviews the 2016 movie The Snowman and gives his thoughts on whether it lives up to the chilling crime tale it's meant to be or if it's just one big flop. So let's check it out.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the 2-Minute Movie Reviews here on La Trobe Live, and today we'll be looking at one of Universal's most latest releases, and that is, that's backwards, The Snowman. The Snowman stars Michael Fassbender, Rebecca Ferguson, Val Kilmer and also J.K. Simmons, a pretty good cast, and it tells the story of 2 Norwegian police officers and their quest to bring down a serial killer who builds snowmen around his crime scenes. I'll start with some of the main characters. The main character played by Michael Fassbender is Detective Harry Hole. Yep, his name is Hole. He goes with Rebecca Ferguson's character to investigate the disappearance of a young woman, and this eventually leads them to the point where they discover that there is a serial killer about, and that is basically the main plot of this movie. Now you think to yourself on paper that, you know, you've got a great cast, you've got a pretty good director, you've got Martin Scorsese as an executive producer. You're thinking this is perfect, this is a recipe for success. But it was a disaster, absolute disaster. I genuinely can't believe that someone found a way to make a movie so boring, dull, genuinely uninteresting, to the point where the only good thing coming out of this movie is that some of its cinematography is pretty good. The editing in this movie is just so amateur and choppy. It doesn't feel like a 3-time Oscar winner edited this movie, but she did. And it astounds me. For the first third of this movie, I was thinking to myself, okay, this is quite slow, but hopefully this is just a start. This is just the build-up, and hopefully we get a really good reveal at the end, a really good finale, and, you know, it all comes full circle in the end. It just doesn't. You know, there are better movies out there of this genre, and I would highly recommend nearly every single one of those to you because, you know, there's not much that can be worse than this. Actually, speaking of this, there's something I've got to do. That was extremely satisfying. Anyway, look forward to my review next week of the latest Ewan McGregor movie, Christopher Robin, which has hit theatres here in Australia. And, well, I can't wait to bring that one to you. But for now, guys, back to you in the studio.
I love it. I love it. The fact that you put
flushed
the
it down the
movie
toilet.
in the toilet.
I did, yes. I certainly did. I would have... Okay, fine.
Don't leave it hanging.
Don't leave me hanging.
I won't. But yeah, it was certainly worth it. It was just a terrible movie. That's probably the easiest way to describe it.
I can imagine because I was surfing the interwebs because that's what I do when whenever I'm told that you're going to review a film. And every article that I saw, it just had the words terrible, yep, it's so bad, plastered all over it. Can you tell me why it was so terrible? Because you've watched the film, obviously, because you had to review it. But
Well, it's based off of a novel, a very good novel by a Norwegian crime writer who has done a lot of good books in the past. And the movie adaptation was one that was welcomed by a lot of movie fans. I think when Michael Fassbender was cast as Harry Hole, yeah, his surname is Hole, just to confirm, a lot of people got excited because they're thinking he's perfect for the role. And then you got a great director, you got Martin Scorsese, you got a great cast. It looks like it's
So
on paper.
odd,
Yeah,
yeah.
it looks like it's perfect. And then I watched it and I'm thinking to myself, nothing's interesting me. It's just dragging on and I'm waiting for something to happen and then something does happen and it's just terrible. Like, I don't mind spoiling the ending for the movie, but the killer, he's walking out onto a lake and the reason the killer dies is because he steps in a bit of the the lake that isn't frozen, that it's melted. So the killer dies because he doesn't look where he's walking.
Yeah.
That is how the film ends.
And that's what I read. Some people were saying that the ending is just horrendous. And like you mentioned in your package, Martin Scorsese was involved in it. Now he's got an Oscars, hasn't he, for his work?
Well, he's only received the one.
Yeah.
But he's probably could have received a lot more in his career. But he's one of the most famous directors to ever work.
Yeah,
He's got so many good movies out there, and the fact that he was on board as an executive producer means that he doesn't have the pressure of sitting in a director's chair. He can oversee the movie and I guess make recommendations for the filmmakers and the actors. And that just made me want to like the movie even more.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it just didn't work out.
I think the movie had a lot of potential. They just didn't execute it as well as it should have because they had a $35 million budget and only made $6.7 million in the US.
Well, I think that's where maybe the negative reviews would have come into play. I think on opening weekend, a lot of people would have been waiting for the reviews to come out and then they would base whether they spend their money on the movie or not around the reviews. And something else that sort of bugged me about the movie is that my dad watched the movie with me and he read the novel and absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And then he told me that the movie was just nowhere near the book adaptation and that they cut so much out of the movie. And it surprised me that they'd actually do that for a movie based off of a book. And then I read into a couple of articles myself and I found out that the director actually said that they were forced to cut several scenes from the movie.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Yeah, and there's a lot of gaps that are left in the movie, and that doesn't surprise me at all because they were forced to make these changes, and it shows in the final product.
Yeah, and as we obviously saw in the story, is that Michael Fassbender is in this film as well. I love Michael Fassbender, so I was really surprised that this movie didn't do very well. But he's also apparently lined up to potentially play James Bond. What do you think about that? After seeing this movie, do you think it would work out? I don't know. I feel like this is no good.
It's certainly no good. You got that right. But Michael Fassbender would be a pretty good fit for James Bond. I reckon I've seen him in Inglorious something, and he plays a very, I guess, well-respected British officer in that movie, and he pulls off the posh Englishman very well. He does it very well in that movie. But if I was to predict the next Bond actor, I can't go past Idris Elba.
Oh, I'm the same.
And when he sent out a tweet a few weeks ago saying the name's Idris Elba, I got so excited. And I'm just thinking he'd be perfect for it. So he'd be great for it. But again, I'd like to. Fassbender wouldn't be too bad of a fit, I would say.
Yeah, I think it'd be all right. But anyway, Caelum, thank you so much for being here. It was lovely talking to you about this kind of bad film.
It's a bad film, no ifs or buts.
But anyway, now it's time to go into sport. So let's head over.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome, boys.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
We've had a big break.
It's been a week. It's been a week since we've seen each other.
It's been a big week though. There was grand finals.
It was a big grand final, wasn't it, Mitch? It was one for the ages.
Yeah, certainly. I think we've struggled the last few years to have a close game. We've had a few good games with the Dogs in 2015, but a 5-point win for the Eagles. Took out their fourth premiership since their start of the AFL campaign, and obviously, unfortunately for you, the Pies went down.
We were told not to mention the Pies.
I hate to bring it up, but there were obviously two teams playing out there, and like you said, it was a fantastic game. But look, straight soon on to the next game. But we'll talk about when we do talk about the grand final. And the Eagles. It was probably one of the best performances we've seen, or second half performances we've seen. You talk about premiership quarters and whatnot, and the Eagles' third and fourth quarters were fantastic. And I was pretty happy to, as a neutral, to have a close game, or the first one since about 2012.
Yeah, I was also happy to see a close game because I try to attend as many grand finals as I possibly can. And after last year, seeing Richmond win so convincingly, I just wanted to see Collingwood win. And then when it got close, I just say, if we win close, we win close. That's the main thing. But the one thing that I took away from this game is not just the fact that we're able to get to the grand final ahead of Richmond, was the fact that Dom Sheed kicked possibly one of the greatest grand final goals in history. Did you girls manage to catch it?
Not quite.
I wasn't watching on TV, but everyone was updating me on Instagram, and it was really close. I was like on the edge of my seat, not even watching it live. But both sides weren't favoured to make it to this far into the final series. How well did you think they performed?
Caelum.
Well, I think the Eagles were perhaps less of a surprise to make the grand final, given that they won their qualifying final and had that home prelim final to get into the big dance. And they were never really. I was always expecting them to get that far. They were easily the second best team in the home and away season behind the Tigers.
For sure.
But for Collingwood, it was much more of a surprise because I think there was a period towards the end of the season where they sort of dropped off in a couple of games, and then there was one game against Fremantle where they really struggled and they looked like they were just running out of legs, but they managed to fight back. And under Nathan Buckley, who has done a marvellous job this year as Collingwood coach, he managed to get them to the grand final, and they came just short of winning that big one for Bucks. The one that he hasn't been able to get throughout his career thus far.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that you try to go to as many grand finals as you possibly can. How would you rate this year's grand final in comparison to maybe previous years? The atmosphere, I guess.
Well, the atmosphere was unbelievable. I think Richmond created a massive atmosphere at the ground last year, and I think this year for the Pies, they nearly outdid them. I think the Eagles sort of, I guess, evened it out a little bit, but in terms of the atmosphere and the quality of the game, it's the best one in a long, long time, maybe 10, 12 years. I think the 2012 grand final between Hawthorn and Sydney is always going to be rated as a classic, but for me, this one just nips it as the best of, I guess, the 2010s.
What about yourself, Mitch?
Yeah, you talk about both teams, and obviously they played each other in the first round of finals, and that was a nail-biter over at Optus Stadium in Perth. And I think we're kind of hoping for something more of the same, and we certainly got it. When you, as a Geelong fan, I like to always talk about 2009 was probably a classic, and then you talk about maybe the 05 and 06 double up between Eagles and Sydney. Those two, both games going down to a kick as well. So as far as this one ranks, I'd say it's certainly in the top 5. This century, and when you talk about both teams' campaign towards the finals, I didn't have either in the 8 at the start of the year, and they've both managed to get to the final game of the season. Collingwood everything I thought about them, they just proved me wrong too. And I was at that prelim against Richmond, and following that game, you thought, geez, I was a bit scared actually that the Pies could get up and actually take the cup. But I was pretty happy that, unfortunately for Caelum, that the Eagles did get up. But no, like I said, I was pretty happy to just be watching a good neutral game. No matter who won.
Listening to the news and the radio on the day, Collingwood got a lot of love from Melbourne, but a lot of hate at the same time. As a Collingwood fan, how do you feel about that?
I think it's understandable. Look, there's a lot of bias there was a lot of bias against Collingwood from obviously the fans in Perth, and then there were a lot of fans here in Victoria who support some of the other Big Four teams in Richmond, Essendon, Carlton, who were just never going to support Collingwood, no matter what who they were playing. Yeah, but it's look, I don't mind it. I think the fact that they actually came out during the week and said, we're a Victorian side, you come support us. I think that was a little bit over the top. They took it in a jovial way, but at the same time, it was probably a little bit over the top. People support who they want to support. Don't force them into it. And it probably takes a lot of the shine off of West Coast. I think that, especially here in Victoria, we probably take away a lot of shine from what teams in WA do, especially the Eagles, because they've been so good over the last 4 to 5 years. They've always been there or thereabouts, and this was their crowning moment. And I think, especially in Victoria, we don't really give them enough credit. And to their credit, they did pretty well.
What are the latest trade and free agencies news coming after the end of this season?
Well, I think the big one is, it's the elephant in the AFL trades room, isn't it, Mitch? The Tom Lynch deal from Gold Coast to Richmond. He's been out of contract all year as Tom Lynch, and he's finally made his decision.
Yeah, I think even before the season had started, there were questions about where he was going to end up and if he was coming back to Melbourne or staying up on the coast. And I think it was admitted yesterday that he was was looking to make a move to the Tigers, which has put a bit of an uproar, you'd say. It
was one of the worst kept secrets in AFL.
Yeah, exactly right. There were mentions of obviously Hawthorn and Collingwood, probably sides that probably were more after a key forward, but exactly right. And the move's only going to make probably arguably still the best team better, which is quite scary going into next year. But as for Lynch, he's a strong talent. He's only going to make the Tigers better. But then again, there's a lot more flock coming from interstate for Victorian teams. Another one, obviously, when we talk about West Coast, is Andrew Gaff. He looks adamant to go to potentially North or stay over in Perth. Where do you see that move ending up?
Well, I think the fact that the Eagles haven't come out and said anything about him staying, or they haven't made any definitive statement, shows that he's most likely going to be on the move, and the rumours have been circling for nearly a year now that he was going to move on at the end of his contract. And it wouldn't surprise me if Andrew Gaff did go to North Melbourne based on those, I guess, assumptions. He's been a superb player for the Eagles, but as a Victorian, we see a lot of them want to come home and stay close to family. And to see Andrew Gaff do that would be not only a good move for him, but a good move for North Melbourne, who are finally going to land their big fish that they've been chasing for so many years now.
Yeah.
Another big one that's been making waves in Melbourne is Stephen May. He's been rumoured to be moving to Collingwood, but now Melbourne have entered the mix. And after Lachie Neale announced that he wanted to move to Brisbane, that almost seems as if it's the first domino to fall in the 3 deals that would also see Jesse Hogan move to Fremantle. So it's a busy start to trade period, even though it hasn't officially kicked off yet.
Yeah, exactly right. I think as soon as before even it was 3/4 time of the grand final, there was trade rumours flying left, right, and centre on Twitter and Facebook, and I think anyone can really have their own opinion this time of the year with trades. And like you said, as soon as one move goes, just domino effect, and it slowly just snowballs into this. And we are looking at probably one of the biggest trade periods of late, with obviously like names like Neale, Gaff, Lynch as well, and then you throw Hogan on top of that, who's looking for a move home. So it could be really interesting. A lot of clubs have already looked to move players on, and a lot of players have already selected other clubs to as their home for next year. So just interesting to see how long it takes to get these moves done. But I think we are in for a big trade period.
Yeah, and another name that's been mentioned was Giant star Dylan Shields, I believe. Like, he's reportedly has offers on the table worth up to about $8 million from a Melbourne-based club. So that will apparently make him one of the highest paid players ever. So do you guys know Dylan? What are your thoughts on that?
He's a high quality player. There's no doubt about that. He's one of the best midfielders in the competition, and GWS have relied on him for so many years as their inside midfield bull who can break away and kick goals. He's been a superb player for them, but as a Victorian, they always just want to move back, don't they? It's just a common thread that we happen to see in the AFL, and there's a lot of clubs chasing him, and for good reason. But if I had to predict that he was to go to one club or another, I'd have to say he goes to the Blues, Carlton, because they're a side that are extremely lacking in midfield depth and midfield stars. They've got Patrick Cripps, they've got Sam Doherty, and they're probably their only 2 A-graders. So I think that for Carlton to land Shield would be an amazing move.
Well, funny that you said that you think that he might go to Carlton, you reckon. Apparently the Herald Sun reckons that it's going to be the Hawks.
But they're only offering $850,000, while St Kilda is offering $1.2 million.
Oh.
So if it's for money.
It is. The one thing with the players, when you do wave a few bags of money in their face, it's always going to have some impact. And with Shield, I think he's got 5 or 6 Victorian clubs after him. The Blues obviously have pick 1. I'm not sure they should ship pick 1 for him. I think if they can build towards probably holding a bit more for the future. Obviously, Shield's a proven talent, but I'd look on to moving, maybe for pick 1 in what is supposed to be a super draft. I think that'd be a bit more exciting for the Blues, and wait for Shield out of contract in years to come. Do you think that is worth pick 1, or would you prefer to see the Blues hold off and look for the future in a younger player?
Well, it's really 50-50 the way I see it. Carlton have gone to the draft so many times in recent years, and they've often drafted players who not necessarily haven't lived up to the hype, but they haven't gotten to that level that they've been expected to. So maybe this could be the year where Brendan Bolton and co decide, you know what, this is the year where we make our big move, we get our big star, and we bring him in, we give up our number 1 pick. And if Carlton do hold on to that number 1 pick, they'll still get a pretty good midfielder, but he'll still be a few years behind his peak, and that's Sam Walsh. So if Carlton hold on to that number 1 pick, it wouldn't be the worst move. But I think now's the right time to make a move and get Dylan Shield, because they're not going to get an opportunity to sign a big star like this for a long time, I would say. Yeah,
obviously you talk about Brisbane Lions picking up Lachie Neale. They're making moves and potentially looking at a top 8 finish after their season. Probably surprised a few with a run of wins. So, I think you're probably right. I think maybe if they do send pick 1 for Shield, they're probably hoping get a little bit more back. They're after Will Setterfield as well, another young talent, high draft pick who hasn't seen as much on the footy field for the Giants. So I'd probably accept that. If you could manage to get Shield and Setterfield for just the pick, It'd be exciting, especially with a long list of talent coming from South Australia. So the last thing the Blues would want is to have such a great player, but then move on so quickly.
Well, as much as I love talking AFL, as you guys know, we're going to have to end the sports segment, but thank you so much for joining us, guys. And that's all for today's show, but join us again next week for the latest breaking news, sports and entertainment. And as always, we say goodbye-bye.